Hey, morons, who's hungry?
No, we're not trying to insult you. We were morons too until we discovered macros.
If you've been hearing that word being thrown around but haven't figured out what the hell people are talking about, well, you're in the right place. Macros are simple and fun to grasp, and we got you covered, whether you're trying to lose weight or gain weight. We all need to follow some kind of diet, whether we're trying to trim that body fat or pack on some hard muscle or torture our body in some other way. We eat meals every day, or hopefully you are, but most of us don't put much thought into what those foods are made of. As you're probably already aware, nearly all foods can be grouped into three types of nutrients: proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. In fact, these are the three macronutrients of foods, and that's where that buzzword comes in. Macros.
Now you can brag to your friends that you know what macros are. But obviously, proteins, fats, and carbs are quite different. We eat food for energy, and all three macros can be used for fuel, but carbs are the only one that's converted directly into glucose to be used for energy. Fats get turned into fatty acids, which are stored in fat cells or used for energy at a later time. Proteins can be used as energy after they're broken down into amino acids, but our bodies mostly use proteins to make muscle, hormones, and other proteins. But there is something else that all three of these macros have in common, and that's calories.
So yeah, there are calories hiding in proteins, fats, and carbs, but the calorie density of the three macros are where things get a little tricky. Proteins pretty much all have 4 calories per gram, but 1 gram of fat has over twice as many at 9 calories per gram. Carbohydrates have a rather convoluted story. Generally, there's 4 calories per gram of carbs, but not all carbs are created equal. Fiber is a type of carb that we'll talk about in a minute, which holds only about 2 calories per gram. And we haven't even mentioned alcohol yet. Yep, we have to take alcohol into account since nearly all of us drink it, right? Pure alcohol itself has 7 calories per gram, which most folks don't even take into account. But for now, let's just stick to the 3 macros and take a crash course on each one.
Eggs, milk, chicken, steak, other various meats. Everyone has heard of protein. Whether you're a bodybuilder or a casual consumer, it seems like protein is advertised everywhere. But what even is it? Well, to put it simply, proteins are the building blocks of muscle and are comprised of amino acids. You might have heard of amino acids if you've taken a biology course, but you don't need to know all 22 of them right now. Unlike fats and carbs, the amount of protein you consume actually won't terribly affect your health. Unless, of course, you're eating virtually none at all. So, if you want to bump up your protein intake to 400 grams a day, well, that's overboard but not harmful. It's proven that people who have higher protein diets lose fat and build muscle, even without resistance training. Fats are the macro that gets a pretty bad rap. They're the most calorically dense of the macros, but this does not mean that you should avoid them. Fats are incredibly beneficial and healthy for you in the forms of nuts, oils, nut butters, etc. Embrace the fats! This isn't an excuse to go crazy though. Fats should almost always be kept moderate unless otherwise needed, and you should absolutely avoid processed fats from foods like ice cream, chocolate, pizza, many salad dressings. Our advice is to stick to the quote-unquote good fats as much as possible. The same thing applies to carbohydrates. Everyone loves talking about carbs and how bad they are, but this is actually not the case. Carbs are by far the most diverse of the macronutrients, and while you should definitely avoid some of them, carbs from starchy sources like potatoes, whole grains, oatmeal, and rice are not only delicious but great for energy, and you should consume them often. These are all complex carbohydrates with low glycemic indexes, so you won't get an insulin spike from eating these. Insulin, by the way, is a hormone produced by the pancreas to regulate the amount of glucose in our blood, which is the main sugar used for energy. Now, fibrous carbs, which usually come in the form of vegetables, should also be a big part of your diet. While foods like broccoli, spinach, green beans, zucchini, cauliflower, peas, blah 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 may not always sound appetizing, they are essential to having a well-balanced diet and actually can taste good if you are creative.
Another type of carb to take into consideration are sugars. Sugars are not inherently bad when they come from natural sources like fruits, such as apples or bananas. However, you should severely mitigate your consumption of sugar compared to your usual diet these days. Simple sugars usually come in processed foods and are the absolute worst culprit when it comes to weight gain. Plus, if you consume too much sugar, like we just mentioned, you'll wind up with an insulin spike, and over time, this can lead to many health issues such as diabetes.
Besides the 3 macros, there's at least one last calorie trap to mention: alcohol. I know what you're thinking. Alcohol? Huh? Not many people realize that alcohol itself has calories, roughly 7 calories per gram. Even in the lighter beers, you might notice that they hold over 100 calories per bottle. So, beer could be the culprit if your nutrition is on point otherwise to why you have a beer gut. If you eat healthy and still have that beer gut, our advice is to not drink a 6-pack of beer every night. Also, just cut back on beer anyway. It's not good for you. Wine is better and can give you some health benefits if you drink it in moderation, but it is loaded with sugar. So if you're going to drink it at all, drink 1 glass and watch for those insulin surges.
So now you know all about macros and booze, but maybe you want to know how to apply this to losing weight or gaining muscle, or both if you're really adventurous. Well, in our theme of keeping it simple, there are really only 3 formulas you need to remember. The first formula is as simple as pie. Don't eat pie though. So, if you consume less calories than you burn, then congratulations, you're in a caloric deficit. So, if calories in is less than calories out, that equals a deficit. And unsurprisingly, the next equation is just the opposite. If you gorge on more calories than you burn, then congratulations, you're in a caloric surplus. Wait a minute, why congrats? Well, depending on your current goal, that may be just what you need. We tend to stick to a caloric deficit when we're trying to lose weight, and we generally want a caloric surplus when we're trying to pack on muscle.
So then, how do you know how many calories you're burning so that you can figure out how much to eat? Well, that's a little more complicated, but it boils down to one simple total that you can calculate online. It's called your BMR, or Basal Metabolic Rate. Your BMR is calculating how many calories your body burns just to keep you ticking and your brain functioning. It's the number of calories you burn if you just laid in bed for 24 hours without moving. But who the hell even does that? Well, we don't, but you'll see in a minute why it's an important number anyway. You can calculate your BMR with several websites, the links of which are in the description. And after you're done watching this, use those links to get your BMR. So by itself, your BMR isn't quite as helpful, but what if you multiplied your activity level? There you go. Simply find your current activity level on a chart and multiply it by your BMR. That's roughly how many calories you're burning today. That number is your daily caloric requirement.
Well, now you know how many calories you're burning, so now what? Do you just pick one of those fad diets and start munching away? The world is littered with these dartboard diets, from keto to paleo to if it fits your macros to primal. There's even a popcorn diet. There's intermittent fasting. There's 48-hour fasting. So which one do you pick? For now, fuck all those. Just keep it simple and start with the basics. If you're trying to lose weight, make sure you're eating less calories than your daily calorie needs, that number that you just calculated. That's a caloric deficit. Any mammal eating less than it's burning will lose weight, and that includes you. The opposite is true if you're trying to gain weight. Hopefully the weight you want to gain is all muscle. So simply eat more calories than you burn in one day, and you'll prime your body to pack on the meat.
Now that you know how many calories you need, what do? Just stuff your face with 1,800 calories of ice cream? No! Split your 3 macros into percentages and try roughly to stick with it. The exact ratio of macros honestly isn't that important, but begin with something reasonable like 40% of your calories from carbohydrates, 30% from protein, and the other 30% from fat. Feel free to tweak that ratio a little over time, but be mindful of your total daily calories.
So for those of you who were just zoning out on Snapchat or Facebook while we were talking, yes, we're talking to you. Well, today we explained what macros are, how they can help you with your weight loss goals, and what to avoid when choosing your meals. We also reminded you that you don't need to obsessively count your macros, and there's no reason to make this complicated. So remember, as a general rule, just be mindful of what you're sticking in your mouth. You only have one body, so don't screw it up. That's all for now, so if you enjoyed this nutrition primer, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications by clicking that reminder bell. We hope to see you again very soon. Thanks for watching.